They say money reveals character, but I never thought it would expose my family's greed so spectacularly. When my grandfather passed away, the air around us seemed thick with unspoken expectations. Who would get what? Who he loved most? Who deserved the biggest slice of the inheritance pie? I was the quiet one, the overlooked granddaughter who'd moved to a small apartment and spent most of her time building a YouTube channel called Amelia Voice, where I narrated other people's stories of betrayal and karma. Little did I know, I was about to become the center of one. The day of the reading, my uncles and aunts arrived dressed in somber black, but their eyes gleamed like hawks circling a carcass. My mother, always anxious to please them, whispered, "Just stay quiet, Amelia." Grandpa didn't have much left anyway. I wanted to believe her, but something in me remembered the look Grandpa gave me the last time I saw him, tired but knowing, like he'd already planned something. The lawyer cleared his throat, reading each bequest with a rehearsed tone. My cousins received houses, cars, jewelry, shares in his company. Every announcement was met with gasps and forced gratitude, but when he reached my name, his voice dropped. "To my granddaughter Amelia," he said, pausing for a heartbeat, "I leave $100. The room went silent before erupting into laughter. My Aunt Lisa snorted. "Guess he didn't like your YouTube hobby much, huh?" My uncle smirked. "Maybe he figured you'd turn it into content." I smiled, forcing a laugh, pretending it didn't sting. $100. That was less than the price of my microphone. My mother's face flushed with embarrassment as she squeezed my arm, muttering that we'd talk later. But I didn't cry. I didn't yell. Because deep down, I felt that Grandpa's story wasn't over yet. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at the crisp $100 bill that the lawyer had handed me in a white envelope. It almost felt like a joke. My channel subscribers loved stories about poetic justice, and suddenly I was living one. The thought made me laugh bitterly as I turned the envelope over and noticed something odd, a faint indentation beneath the flap, as though someone had pressed hard while writing something that was later erased. I grabbed a pencil and lightly shaded over it, just like I'd seen in old detective movies. Slowly, faint words appeared. "Check the account under your name." "Use the key." My heart pounded. What key? I tore through the envelope again, and a small folded paper slipped out, one I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a 10-digit number and the name of a bank I didn't recognize. The handwriting was undeniably his, deliberate, neat, with that slight rightward tilt. I didn't understand. My grandfather had always been private about his finances, and he certainly didn't mention anything about me having an account. Still, curiosity gnawed at me. The next morning, I walked into the bank listed on the note, a small, old-fashioned building that seemed out of place among the glossy towers downtown. The marble floor echoed with each of my steps, the air smelling faintly of lemon polish and old paper. At the counter, I handed the note to a teller, who frowned and asked me to wait. Minutes later, a manager appeared, a man in his 60s with a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Miss Amelia?" he asked. I nodded nervously. "Please follow me." He led me into a private room, and as the door closed, he locked it gently. My pulse quickened. "Your grandfather instructed us to contact him directly should you ever inquire about this account," he said carefully. "Since he's passed, the instructions are now to confirm your identity and proceed." He typed something into his computer, then turned the screen slightly toward me. My breath caught. The balance displayed more zeros than I'd ever seen in my life. $8 million. My voice broke into a whisper. This can't be real." The manager smiled faintly. "Offshore account. Established 20 years ago. It's all legally yours, Miss Amelia." For a full minute, I couldn't speak. My mind replayed every laugh, every sneer from that inheritance meeting. $100. That's what they thought I was worth. But Grandpa had seen through them all, and somehow he'd made sure I was the one holding the last card. I left the bank in a daze, clutching a sealed envelope the manager had handed me. Inside were account details, legal documents, and one more note from Grandpa. "Use this wisely, sweetheart. They never valued honesty, but you always did. Build something that lasts. Tears blurred my vision as I read those words over and over. For once, I didn't feel invisible. That night, I sat in front of my camera, recording a video not for upload but just for myself. I looked into the lens and whispered, "Grandpa?" They laughed, but you knew. My apartment felt warmer somehow, like he was still watching. The next day, my mother called, her voice hesitant. "Your cousins are planning a celebration dinner. They wanted to invite you, to smooth things over." I almost laughed. Smooth things over after publicly mocking me? I agreed anyway, curiosity burning inside me. Maybe it was time to show them what they'd missed. I arrived in a simple black dress, the same one I'd worn at the will reading, but this time I carried a quiet confidence. My uncles smirked when I entered, already half drunk and loud with their new fortunes. "Well, if it isn't Miss $100, one of them jeered and everyone laughed. But I didn't. I just smiled and said, "Yeah, about that." The laughter at the table simmered down when they noticed my smile didn't falter. My Aunt Lisa tilted her glass toward me, her diamond bracelet catching the light like a weapon. "What's that look for, Amelia? You finally going to tell us how you spent your $100? She snickered. My mother shot me a warning glance, but I ignored it. The waiter arrived with wine, and I raised my glass calmly. "Actually," I said, voice steady, "I wanted to thank you all. That $100 meant more to me than you'll ever know." A few of them chuckled, thinking I was joking. I let them. Because it led me to something Grandpa left behind, something he didn't mention in the will. The table grew still. My cousin Derek frowned. "What do you mean?" I leaned back, letting the suspense breathe. Let's just say Grandpa had his reasons for doing things quietly. He trusted me to find it, my uncle scoffed. "Oh, please, what could he possibly have left you? The man barely remembered your birthday." My fingers brushed against the envelope in my bag, where the offshore account documents rested. I didn't plan to flaunt it, but part of me wanted to see their smug faces crumble. "He remembered enough," I said softly. "And I remembered everything he ever told me about integrity, about how money shows who people really are." The silence thickened. My mother whispered, "Amelia, stop." But I couldn't. I'd been invisible too long. "You all laughed when I got $100, I said, eyes sweeping the table. "But Grandpa wasn't punishing me. He was testing you." That single sentence shifted the energy like a thunderclap. Lisa's smile faltered. Derek frowned. My uncle leaned forward. "Testing us? For what?" I smiled faintly. "For greed. For respect. For how you'd treat someone who you thought had nothing." I watched the realization flicker behind their eyes. The truth was too big to hide now. "He didn't leave me a house or a car," I continued, voice low but firm. "He left me a key to something bigger." The table erupted in murmurs. Derek sneered. "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone, opening the secure banking app I'd set up the night before. Their laughter returned, lighter this time, mocking. "Oh, she's got an app. What, a few hundred more in your savings?" But when I turned the screen around, their faces changed instantly. The number was clear, 8 followed by 6 zeros. For a long moment, no one spoke. You could hear the clinking of glasses from the next table, the distant hum of the restaurant's soft jazz. My aunt's hand trembled as she set her glass down. That's not possible," she stammered. "It's fake. It has to be." I smiled again, calmly sipping my wine. "Grandpa opened it 20 years ago. Offshore, under my name. The lawyer didn't know because it wasn't part of the estate." My uncle's face turned red. He couldn't do that without telling us." "He could," I said evenly. "And he did. Because he knew what would happen if you found out before I did." The silence that followed was pure satisfaction. Every sneer, every eye roll, every whispered insult. They all replayed in their minds now with a twist of regret. My mother stared at me in shock, torn between pride and fear. She'd spent her life trying to stay in their good graces, but now I could see the weight lifting from her shoulders. "Amelia," she whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" I smiled softly, because I needed to be sure. Grandpa wanted me to earn this moment, to see everyone's true face first. Lisa finally snapped, her voice sharp. You can't just sit there acting holier than thou. If he left you money, it belongs to the family. He built his wealth with our help. I laughed then, a quiet, dangerous laugh that made them all shift uncomfortably. No, Aunt Lisa, he built it despite your help. And he left it to the one person who didn't ask for it. I stood up slowly, letting the chair scrape against the marble floor, drawing every gaze. You see, I continued, you thought I was the one left behind. But Grandpa knew I'd take what he gave me and make it grow. I have plans, ones that honor his name, not exploit it. My uncle barked a bitter laugh. Plans, you? What, another YouTube channel? I met his glare without flinching. Actually, yes. Amelia Voice is going global. I'm hiring a production team, creating a foundation in Grandpa's name for underprivileged students. That's what this money will do. Their jaws tightened. Meanwhile, you can keep your cars and jewelry, I added. You've already shown the world what they're worth. I turned to leave, but my mother caught my arm. Amelia, wait, she said softly. What about forgiveness? I paused, glancing at the family that had laughed at my pain, now stunned into silence. Forgiveness? I repeated. Maybe one day, but not tonight. I walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air wrapping around me like freedom. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful, not because of the money, but because I'd seen the truth behind their masks. Back home, I opened my laptop, my mind buzzing with purpose. My channel had always been about other people's stories, tales of betrayal, revenge, and poetic justice. Now I had my own. I hit record, took a deep breath, and began. Hi everyone, it's Amelia from Amelia Voice. Tonight I'm telling a story that's a little personal. It's about family, greed, and $100 that changed everything. My voice was steady, calm, but every word pulsed with emotion. I didn't mention the $8 million or the bank. I didn't need to. The story itself was enough. As I finished, I smiled at the camera. Sometimes, I said, the best revenge isn't loud. It's living well and letting them watch. The video went live at midnight, more as a confession than a performance. I didn't expect anyone to notice right away. After all, Amelia Voice had grown modestly, with just over 200,000 subscribers. But by the time I woke up the next morning, my phone was a buzzing storm of notifications. The story had gone viral overnight. People were commenting by the thousands, saying things like, "This is straight out of a movie," and "Your grandpa was a genius." The phrase "they laughed at me for 100" was trending. My inbox overflowed with messages from news outlets asking for interviews, sponsorship offers, and collaboration requests. It was overwhelming but exhilarating. Grandpa had left me not just wealth, but a story that resonated with the world. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over yet, that something deeper in his plan was waiting to unfold. Around noon, as I was replying to comments, my phone rang. The caller ID was hidden. I hesitated but answered. "Miss Amelia?" said a low, formal voice. "This is Mr. Carter, your grandfather's attorney. I've been instructed to reach out once you've accessed the account." My heart skipped. "Yes, I did. But why now?" He exhaled softly. "Because your grandfather left one final message, sealed until confirmation of your access. He wanted you to receive it privately." My pulse quickened. "Can you email it?" He hesitated. He insisted it must be delivered in person. That evening, Mr. Carter arrived at my apartment, dressed in a charcoal suit, his briefcase perfectly polished. He handed me a thick envelope embossed with Grandpa's initials. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were handwritten pages, his words, his unmistakable penmanship. "My dearest Amelia," it began, "if you're reading this, then you've proven that patience and honesty outlast greed. You must be wondering why I did what I did. The truth is, the family lost themselves long ago chasing money that meant nothing. But you reminded me of what it felt like to build something with heart. I watched your little channel grow and saw how you spoke truth, even when it cost you. That's why I chose you, not for your success, but for your spirit." My eyes filled with tears as I kept reading. "The $8 million is not a gift. It's a responsibility. You'll find in the bank documents a secondary clause, a trust established in your name. It activates only when you donate a portion to a cause you truly believe in. Use it wisely, Amelia. Legacy is not what we keep, but what we give. I sat there in silence, the letter trembling in my hands. Grandpa had known exactly how to guide me even from beyond the grave. This wasn't just inheritance, it was mentorship. Later that night, as rain drummed softly on the windows, I opened the secondary documents Mr. Carter had left. The trust was real. If I donated even a small percentage, say 1 million, it would unlock additional assets tied to international investments. He'd built a chain reaction of generosity, a system designed to reward giving. I smiled through tears. "You clever old man," I whispered. He hadn't just trusted me with wealth, he'd trusted me with purpose. The next morning, I went live again on my channel, not to gloat, but to share a message. "Hi everyone, it's Amelia. Last time I told you a story about family and betrayal. Today, I want to tell you about legacy." I spoke about how wealth can destroy or heal, how one person's faith can change another's path. I didn't reveal the numbers, but I promised something real. From now on, I said, every month, a portion of my channel's revenue and my personal funds will go toward helping young creators who don't have the means to start. Because sometimes, the next storyteller just needs a mic and a chance. The comment section exploded with love. Shakra Kier, Amelia Voice Foundation started trending. Over the following weeks, I worked tirelessly to build Grandpa's vision. I met with lawyers, accountants, and charity directors. The more I gave, the more opportunities opened. Sponsorships doubled, then tripled. People loved the authenticity, someone who didn't just talk about change, but did it. The irony was almost poetic. The very family that laughed at me for being broke now watched as I appeared in magazines and talk shows as the granddaughter who turned $100 into purpose. My mother began calling daily, proud but cautious. My aunts and uncles, however, weren't so pleased. One night, I received a message from an unknown number. "You think you're better than us?" Grandpa's money was family money. No name, but I didn't need one. It was Derek. Another message followed. "We're going to challenge the will." My stomach tightened. I'd expected it, but seeing the threat written out still hit hard. I forwarded the text to Mr. Carter, who responded almost instantly. "Do not reply. He has no case. Your grandfather planned for this." Still, their bitterness gnawed at me. I wasn't afraid of losing the money. I was afraid of losing what little family I had left. Days turned into weeks, and the tension thickened. One afternoon, as I was filming a narration, a knock echoed through my apartment. I opened the door to find Aunt Lisa standing there, her eyes red from crying. "Amelia," she whispered, "can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let her in. She looked around, her gaze softening at the sight of my neatly organized studio setup. "You've done well," she murmured. "He would have been proud." I didn't respond. She sat down, clasping her hands. We didn't know. We thought you were just playing around on the internet. We were wrong." Her voice cracked. "He always said you had something special. We just didn't see it." For a moment, I saw the aunt I'd loved as a child before greed consumed her. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. "But I won't pretend it didn't hurt." She nodded. "I know, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just came to tell you something." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a gold locket, old, worn, but familiar. "He told me to give this to you one day," she said softly. "Said it belonged to your grandmother. I guess he knew this day would come." My chest tightened. Inside the locket was a faded photo of my grandparents, smiling in front of a seaside house I'd never seen before. Behind the photo, engraved in tiny letters, were the words, "The truth is never what it seems." That night, I couldn't sleep. The locket glowed faintly in the moonlight as I turned it over in my palm. The truth is never what it seems. What did that mean? I remembered Grandpa's letter, his emphasis on responsibility and use it wisely. I opened the trust documents again, scanning for anything I might have missed, and there it was. A small footnote, one I hadn't noticed before. For full access to the Offshore Trust, visit the location in the family archive. Key inside the locket. My breath caught. I clicked open the locket hinge further, and sure enough, hidden beneath the inner rim was a tiny silver key no bigger than a fingernail. My heart pounded. Grandpa wasn't done teaching me lessons yet. The tiny silver key glinted under the desk lamp, delicate yet deliberate, like everything Grandpa ever did. My hand shook as I held it up, 1,000 questions flooding my mind. What archive? What was still hidden? I remembered his old study at the family estate, a place locked since his death, off limits even during the will reading. My relatives had stripped the mansion of valuables, but nobody had dared to touch that room. It had always been Grandpa's sanctuary, filled with books, old maps, and the faint scent of pipe tobacco. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I packed a small bag, slipped the key into my pocket, and drove to the estate. The same long, winding road lined with oak trees that once felt like a fairy tale path, but now seemed like the prelude to a revelation. When I arrived, the house stood silent and hollow. Dust coated the grand staircase, sunlight slicing through half-drawn curtains. Memories rushed back, family gatherings, laughter that now felt false, and the way Grandpa used to wink at me from his armchair as if we shared a secret no one else could see. I made my way upstairs, every creak of the wooden floor echoing like a whisper of the past. The study door loomed at the end of the hallway, sealed with an antique brass lock. My fingers trembled as I slid the little silver key inside. It turned with a soft click, like it had been waiting for me all along. The scent of old paper and cedar filled the room as I stepped inside. Everything was frozen in time, his desk neatly arranged, his globe still tilted toward the South Pacific, a framed photo of my grandmother beside an open ledger. Dust motes danced in the morning light. I walked to the desk, scanning for any sign of what the key was meant for. Then I noticed it. A narrow drawer beneath the main one, almost invisible unless you looked closely. I slid the key into its lock, and the drawer opened with a gentle sigh. Inside lay a single manila folder labeled Project Legacy. My heart raced as I pulled it out. Inside were letters, property deeds, and a sealed envelope with my name in bold handwriting. Amelia, it read. If you've come this far, then you've learned what I truly wanted for you. Not to inherit wealth, but wisdom. The offshore account was never the end. It was the beginning. I used it to fund a network of charitable projects, most of which are dormant now, waiting for a new trustee. That trustee is you. I could hardly breathe. In this folder, you'll find the coordinates to a property in the Caribbean, our family's old villa. Inside, there's a safe containing documents that will show you everything. Investments, partnerships, and the story behind how our family fortune was built. You deserve to know the truth, even if it changes how you see everything. The rest of the letter was signed simply, "Always, Grandpa." Beneath it were plane tickets, booked in my name, first class, dated 2 years ago but never used. He had planned this long before his death. I sank into his old chair, the weight of destiny pressing on my shoulders. For so long, I'd thought this inheritance was a miracle of luck, but now it felt like a mission. Grandpa hadn't just left me money, he'd left me unfinished business. That night, I sat in the study until the stars blinked through the windows, trying to piece together what Project Legacy meant. The documents hinted at an international foundation, one that had funded schools, art programs, even environmental projects. But they'd been shut down decades ago under mysterious circumstances. Some papers were redacted, others stamped confidential. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I booked the next flight to the Caribbean. The journey felt surreal, the hum of the engines, the endless blue ocean below, the echo of Grandpa's words in my head. When I arrived on the island, humidity hit me like a wave, thick with the scent of salt and hibiscus. I took a cab to the address from the folder. The villa stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea, overgrown with vines but still majestic, like a ghost of its former self. The caretaker, an elderly man named Mateo, greeted me with wide eyes. "Miss Amelia," he said in accented English, Your grandfather said you would come one day. My throat tightened. He told you that? Mateo nodded, smiling faintly. He said, when she arrives, the circle will close. He led me inside, the floorboards creaking underfoot, the air heavy with memories. The main hall was lined with portraits of ancestors I barely recognized, stern faces with eyes that seemed to follow me. Mateo guided me to a small study at the back of the villa. Behind a faded painting of a ship was a safe embedded in the wall. He said you'd know what to do, Mateo whispered. My hands shook as I reached for the locket around my neck. The key fit perfectly. With a slow turn, the safe clicked open. Inside were several leather-bound journals, a few sealed envelopes, and one flash drive labeled Truth. I opened the first journal, its pages yellowed but legible. My grandfather's handwriting filled each line, notes, dates, names. The entries told a story I hadn't expected. Our family's fortune, it seemed, hadn't come from simple business success. Decades ago, my great-grandfather had been involved in secret post-war reconstruction deals that bordered on illegal. Offshore accounts, hidden assets, and silent partners had helped bury the origins of the wealth. But my grandfather, disgusted by what he'd discovered in his youth, had spent his life redirecting that money toward good, charities, education, and environmental restoration. He'd turned dirty money into clean purpose, and now he'd passed that redemption to me. Tears blurred the ink as I realized the depth of his trust. He hadn't chosen me because I was family. He'd chosen me because I had the conscience to continue what he started. The flash drive contained digital records, legal documents, and encrypted files confirming everything. It was overwhelming but empowering. I looked around the room, the sea breeze whispering through the cracked window, and said aloud, "I'll finish what you started, Grandpa. I promise." When I returned home, I made an announcement to my followers. This channel began as storytelling, I said, but now it's becoming something bigger. Amelia Voice is launching a real-world initiative, a foundation named Project Legacy, dedicated to rebuilding lives, just like my grandfather rebuilt his own story. The response was explosive. Donations flooded in. Media outlets picked up the story of the granddaughter who turned hidden fortune into hope. But beneath the fame, I kept one secret. There was still one journal left unread, its pages sealed with wax and a warning scrawled across the cover. For Amelia's eyes only. The final truth. I stared at it for days, afraid of what I might find. Part of me wanted to leave it closed, to preserve the version of my grandfather I cherished. But another part, the same curiosity that led me to the first envelope, wouldn't let it rest. Finally, one quiet night, I broke the seal. Inside, the handwriting was different, shaky, hurried. The first line made my blood run cold. If you're reading this, Amelia, someone else knows about the account. Be careful who you trust.